Alright. No guarantees that I beat the Bell Gargoyles, by the way. I have always struggled with these guys. And now begins the true Bell Gargoyle experience of getting fucking ganked. Oh. And goodbye. God damn it. What are the gargoyles even for? They're the Bell Gargoyles. They're guarding the Bell of Awakening. The Bells of Awakening, when both of them are rung, Sen's Fortress opens. Sen's Fortress is a gatekeep. It's a gauntlet, which is designed to test chosen undead. If the chosen undead are strong enough to surpass Sen's Fortress, that means they're strong enough to be granted entrance into the City of the Gods, and Orlando, which is what happens to you. And once in An Orlando, the quest then is to prove that you are strong enough to reunite the Lord Souls and rekindle the First Flame. Basically, once you get to An Orlando, after making your way through Guinevere, well, projected Guinevere's guards, she's like, "Ayo, you're pretty strong. Here you go. Here's the device that you need to reunite all the souls that will be necessary to rekindle the First Flame, and then please go and do that." Oh god. Yep. Why don't they just do it? What's up with all these lazy-ass demigods and gods? They're not strong enough. Well, part of it is that linking the First Flame will kill the person who does it. Gwyn linked the First Flame with his own body, in doing so dooming all of reality by forestalling the Age of Dark, and it turned him into a hollow. It burned away his soul, because of course his soul was the kindling for the fire. So the gods don't want to do it, because, well, it would effectively kill them. And it's also possible that they're just not capable of it. A lot of the gods in these games, while strong, seem to have essentially maxed out their power, you know? I mean, think, you encounter Quelaag, you know, a sister of the Witch of Izalith, who's quite strong. You encounter Gwendolyn, who's quite strong, but they're not as strong as you. You, the chosen undead, canonically beat them, right? So it's possible that even though they're strong, they don't have the capacity to grow as strong as you. Oh, sorry, Quelaag was the daughter, my bad. Yeah, not a sister. So you think humans just have greater potential in the Dark Souls universe? Yeah. I do think so. Keep in mind that in the Dark Souls universe, gods aren't really gods. Like Gwyn and all them, they're more strong than humans. They're larger and stronger, but they're not like deities. Not necessarily, right? Like, we say gods when we refer to Gwyn. Gwyn became a god because he inherited the soul of light, not because of his species or whatever. What we call gods in Dark Souls are just a species of larger humanoid entities. I don't think they're, like, metaphysically stronger than humans are, potentially. And the strongest entity, at the end of the day, ended up being Slave Knight Gale, and he was a human. The main reason I disagree with the "they're not gods" is that we pull power from them via miracles and pyromancy. Well, from pyromancy, in Dark Souls, pyromancy is pulling power from the heretic flame that the Witch of Izalith brought forth. The false flame that was meant to be a second first flame. A second flame, if you will. So I don't think that has anything to do with them being deities. That's just, she was a powerful witch who used the soul of life that she took from the first flame to attempt to create a heretical flame. And as for the miracles, I really get the impression from these games that the miracles you use are only framed as miracles because they were created by a church and an orthodoxy that was meant to lead humans to worship gods. I think the miracles are just sorceries, you know? They're just the math of the universe that was sort of baked into the orthodoxy of the god supremacist world. Then they would scale with int and not faith. Yeah, well, they call it faith, but faith could just be willpower, right? Like, miracles could just be a kind of magic that functioned most effectively with strong will. Will and faith are really closely intertwined, you know, where our brain is. I don't, like, when you use a miracle in these games, it's not like Gwyn hears you. Gwyn is hollow. Gwyn can't fucking hear you. This sounds like a headcanon. Well, it's not confirmed. I'm just... Nothing is. The lore is vague. I just think, personally, that given the socioeconomics of the world as it's described, and the fact that the gods are not gods, and miracles, you know, just didn't exist before the First Flame as far as we know, at least they weren't referred to as miracles, it just makes more sense to me that miracle... Like, it just makes more sense to me that it's just another form of spellcasting that the gods were like, oh yeah, well, we could bake this into the orthodoxy. We could be like, yeah, dude, totally. The reason you can do this magic is totally because we're all literal deities and we're just bestowing our power upon you. That's totally the reason why. You know?
Everybody else out here praising the sun, but Vaush is a Dark Souls atheist cool cat.
It's true. What is that? Those are demons that have crawled up from the demon ruins below. You go pretty far down the map in this game. The basic lore of it is that, basically you have the first flame, which is like kablamo, new zeitgeist. Wow, whoa, my god, whoa. And it gives, a great amount of power to a great amount of people. Oh god, these fucking... Oh. God. Oh, okay. Well, that was ass. But anyway, the first flame was born, and 4 entities in particular took 4 particularly powerful souls from it. The soul of light, which went to Gwyn, the soul of life, which went to the Witch of Izalith, the soul of death, which went to Nito the Grave Lord, and the dark soul, which went to the furtive pig. And First Flame's power began to wane after some time, which made all those who held souls born from it weaker, except for those who held the Dark Soul. The Dark Soul was not affected by the waning of the flame. If anything, it made the Dark Soul stronger and its wielders. So, the Witch of Izalith, who had every reason to want to continue to hold her incredible power, attempted to recreate the first flame, to make a second one. She used her soul of life to rival the power of the first flame, but her heretical magics instead ended up creating the race of demonkind. The demon ruins you go to later in the game, and later the Lost Izalith, is the center point of that gigantic mistake that she made. She is the bed of chaos, twisted by her own magic. The Black Knights that you find across the game are Knights of Gwyn that were charred black by the failed creation of the second First Flame. The Ceaseless Discharge was the one brother of the pack of sorcerers alongside the Witch of Izalith who attempted to create the flame. How does the Chosen Undead get the Dark Soul to get into the kiln of the First Flame if it's split among all humans? I think, and I don't think this is ever spelled out specifically in the lore, but I think that the Dark Soul was, in a dialectical sense, a sort of challenge within the system, an answer to the argument. The Dark Soul may have been produced by the First Flame, but it was the seed of its own downfall. Does that make any sense? Like, the Dark Soul broke all the rules the other souls of the First Flame adhered to. It seems to me like the Dark Soul, though it may have been born of the First Flame, it was the sort of... the Dark Soul wasn't of the First Flame. The Dark Soul was the crack in the First Flame. Does that make any sense? From the power of the First Flame were derived 4 great souls, 3 of which were of the Flame's design, and the 4th of which was the break in that system. Like a mutation? Well, I don't think it was a mutation necessarily. I just think it was the predestined end of the Age of Fire. The Dark Soul was meant to bring about the Age of Dark. It was meant to be the herald of the next age. Or, to put it another way, to be a little bit more literalist, I suppose, you could say that the Dark Soul is the shadow of the power drawn from the First Flame, you know? Like, if you introduce an object into the material world, you introduce its shadow. The shadow is not a physical thing, but it is something that can be identified. And the Dark Soul is that shadow of the First Flame, an entity which must exist as its necessary counterpart, but is not a matter of the thing itself. And I think that would also make sense considering the fact that the furtive pygmy was even allowed to take the Dark Soul. I mean, think about it. The First Flame erupts, and all these super powerful entities arrive to take portions of it, you know? Gwyn, the king of the gods, Nito, the Gravelord, an incredibly powerful witch. I mean, they all show up and take these super powerful souls. And the furtive pygmy, this weak, wretched, powerless creature, is allowed to leave with one of the great souls. I have a feeling there was a reason the others disregarded it so quickly. I thought Gwyn gave it to the pygmy. Did he? If that's the case, then even more so, right? Like, here you go, pitiable thing. Have the runt soul. Yeah. Is the soul of Manus the dark soul? If so, where did Gale find it? I think it's generally accepted that the Manus is the furtive pygmy. Because the pygmies are just a race in the Dark Souls world. In Dark Souls 3, when you go to the Ringed City, that whole city was built for the pygmies as a way of sort of sating them and preventing the spread of the dark. So I have a feeling that in the Dark Souls 1 DLC, Artorias of the Abyss, you travel through Ulasil, which is being corrupted by dark magics because they dug too deep and made too many deals, and then at the end of it you find Manus. I think that Manus... Yeah, the city was given to them by Gwyn. I think that Manus is the furtive pygmy. I think they deliberately dug up the corpse of the furtive pygmy in an effort to sort of learn from his dark magics. And by that point, the furtive pygmy had gone beyond hollow. I mean, well beyond hollow. Hollow doesn't even begin to describe what the furtive pygmy is at that point. And then we have, you know, the troubles. Isn't Manus also the primeval man? Well, that's the thing. Humanity is born of the dark soul. And the furtive pygmy was the original holder of the dark soul. And the origin of the abyss, which is the dark, which was born of the dark soul. So, don't forget it's very likely the humanity sprites are fragments of the dark soul. Well, humanity is fragments of the dark soul. In the game, all humans are born of the dark soul. It splits and divides. One of the design decisions that I really, really like is that in fantasy, it is almost always the case that humanity is like the light of the world. You know? That humanity, if not the light at the very least, then humanity represents like stability and insight and introspection. And like all the other forces out there are the more like chaotic ones, relatively speaking, you know, just not in The Witcher. No, because like in The Witcher and in 40K and all these areas where humanity isn't necessarily the good guy, like humanity is still humanity. Even in the grim dark future where there is only war, like humans are sane, like individually. They have the cognitive capacity for reason. To put it another way, like in Dark Souls lore, it's like if humanity was the force of chaos. The best equivalent that I could think of is that like it would basically be like it's like if in 40K the equivalent would be if humanity was like Nurgle, like by default, like metaphysically humans are the conceptual representation of decay or something like that. Because in Dark Souls, like the gods are terrified of humans, like petrified, you know, because humans aren't just like rabble rousers. They're not just like, oh, they can become strong and overthrow us. Like humans are the metaphysical representation of the end of the Age of Fire. Not a fan of games or shows that have misanthropy. Well, I don't think that Dark Souls is misanthropic at all. In fact, I don't even think that Dark Souls is particularly mean to humans as a concept. I think it's more about... Because the thing is, like, in all the time that we spend learning about the dark, it is never portrayed as a good thing. But humans are. And that's interesting. The dark is fucking horrifying in all of the Dark Souls games. It manifests the most fucked up, wretched creatures. The demons in the Demon Ruins in Izalith are legitimately more human than the creatures of the dark. Like, by a wide margin. The demons are literally just like big, spooky-looking dudes that turn to stone when they die. Like, okay. The dark is like this metaphysical void. The deep ocean from which, like, limitless cold power can be drawn. Okay. What's more, demons are intelligent. There are plenty of examples in the Dark Souls games. Demons are perfectly capable of talking and communicating, of interacting, learning, thinking, feeling. To my knowledge, every example we have ever been shown of a creature of the dark or a creature corrupted by the dark, they have not had those features. Every time we see things born of the abyss, they are utterly alien. and without relatable characteristics. So, like, what are we to make of that? I mean, that's... What are the giants? I think the giants are just another race. The humans are unique. Humans are unique in the Souls universe. The pygmies even aren't born of the Dark Soul. They just seem to be its shepherds. The pygmies are culturally controlling of the Dark Soul, but I don't think they exist of it the way that humans do. Do pygmies exist in the games? You arguably fight one in Manus, in the Artorias of the Abyss DLC of Dark Souls 1, and you do see them at the end of Dark Souls 3. At the end of Dark Souls 3, Slave Knight Gale is killing and eating them to consume whatever fragments of the Dark Soul they possess. Yeah, pygmies are extinct in place of humans everywhere but the Ringed City. So is the Dark Soul dissolved in the blood of all pygmies by the end of Dark Souls 3? Well, basically the Dark Soul divides over time. It splits and multiplies. And when Slave Knight Gale is tasked with assembling the Dark Soul so that his mistress could paint a painting, using the Dark Soul as pigment, he finds that many of the creatures which possess the Dark Soul are so withered that there's nothing left in them but dust. So Slave Knight Gale eats these creatures, all the humans and pygmies that he can find, so that he can wet the Dark Soul in his own blood, which is remarkably badass, just as a concept. So it's safe to assume that by the time you kill him in Dark Souls 3 at the end of time, Slave Knight Gale has probably physically consumed the bodies of literally billions of humans and pygmies. I don't think that's an exaggeration. I mean, you are at the end of time at that point. You could fairly argue that he's been doing that for a virtually infinite length of time. It could well be trillions. It legitimately could be any number. I mean, it could... Somebody asked earlier, how does Dark Souls 2 and 3 carry on from Dark Souls 1? The answer is that Dark Souls 2 doesn't carry on very much at all, to be honest. Dark Souls 2 really does mostly do its own thing, which I think is respectable. Yeah, we're dead here. Let's just, Thank you. Is Dark Souls 2 an alternate universe? No, Dark Souls 2 is just another cycle of fire. There's a lot of ambiguity and a lot of debate in the lore, like fandom, over whether or not the Age of Dark ever happens. So, at the end of Dark Souls 1, you can let the fire burn out and thus beget the Age of Dark, or you can kindle the flame and continue the Age of Fire. And it's often questioned exactly how this cycle takes place, because it seems like the Age of Fire is a natural thing, but its extension by linking the flame is not. Now, we know that the flame gets linked pretty often when the Age of Fire begins, at the very least insofar as we've seen, because that's how these stories take place. In Dark Souls 1, 2, and 3, your job as the Chosen Undead or the Ashen One is to link the fire. Let's take a look at Dark Souls 3. In Dark Souls 3, we know that many cycles have taken place, but cycles of what exactly? Is it an alternation between the Age of Dark and the Age of Fire, or is it just continued linking of the fire over and over and over again? That's the question that I'm interested in. Because by the time we're in Dark Souls 3, there are no longer Chosen Undead, only Ashen One. The implication being, well, not even the implication really, it's basically just stated in the text. The Ashen Ones are the burned bodies of undead who were too weak to meaningfully kindle the flame. So when you arise as an Ashen One, you're not just a chosen undead. You are an amalgam of previous undead who have died attempting to link the flame. Now, I mean, think about what that means, like, logistically. So, if we've reached that point, if we've reached the point now where you have Lords of Cinder who are souls that are strong enough to be continuously relied upon to link the flame, in Dark Souls 3, they must have linked that flame thousands of times. Thousands and thousands of times in Dark Souls 3. So does the Age of Dark ever happen? I genuinely don't know. And in the great cosmology of the Dark Souls universe, you know, in the grand scheme of things, we don't really know what happens after the Age of Dark because we've never seen the Age of Dark. Does that mean that an Age of Fire arises after an Age of Dark? It must be the case if cycles have arisen between the two, because otherwise we wouldn't have another Age of Fire. So, I guess, at the end of the day, my point is this, if I'm to summarize it, okay? If Ages of Dark have happened, why do they turn back into Ages of Fire? The Age of Fire came after the Age of the Ancients, not an Age of Dark. It was the age of the dragons and great trees before the Age of Fire, not the Age of Dark. The Age of Dark is something new. Has it ever happened before? In the Age of Dark ending in Dark Souls 3, the Firekeeper says new sparks of flame will eventually come back. That's the thing that I really don't like, because it's never indicated anywhere in the lore that it is possible to bring about another Age of the Ancients. It's never indicated that you might be able to re-enter the Age of the Ancients. Why can you re-enter the Age of Fire? And what would an Age of Dark look like? We have so little information on what the Age of Dark actually looks like, you know? Like, what do we have description-wise? We have a cold, dark sea, an abyss. The closest thing that we've ever actually seen to the Age of Dark would probably be the Chasm of the Abyss before you fight Manus. It's been called the Age of Man. Okay, so here's the thing that I genuinely don't understand. My understanding of the Age of Dark originally was that there's nothing wrong with it. The reason why so much of the stuff in the Dark Souls games that comes from the Dark, that's influenced by the Dark, is fucked up, is because Gwyn linked the flames. Essentially, it's because Dark in this world, in the Age of Fire, is a corruption. But in the Age of Dark, it would be fine. It would be normal, you know? It's like, it's a corrosive influence here because it's a different cosmology. It's a different universe bleeding into this one. So, of course there are issues. But if the Age of Dark had just been allowed to happen like normal, it could have been fine. But we have no evidence that's the case. The Age of Dark has never been shown to be anything other than fucking horrifying. Whereas the Age of Fire has, for all of its problems, brought about genuine prosperity. You know? Before Gwyn fucked everything up by using himself to link the flame, the asshole, before Gwyn fucked everything up, you know, I mean, people lived and died, they were happy, people built houses. So is the Age of Dark just, like, fundamentally fucked up? Because at the end of Dark Souls 3, the good ending seems to be escaping the cycle altogether, living within the painting. From the lore, it really just seems like the Age of Fire is basically like a bunch of drunk people at a party where they're playing Keep the Balloon Off the Ground, you know? Like, bap it up in the air so it stays in the air. But the rule is that, like, even if it touches the ground, you can just bap it back up in the air. Does that make sense? That seems to be how the Age of Fire is. It's like, we keep it up here, oh, we linked the fire, oh, staying up. Then it hits the ground, Age of Dark begins. Oh, we linked the flame again, whoa, you know. Like, it's the same first flame. I think the Age of Dark just broadly refers to time the flame isn't lit. Okay, the closest that we've seen to that, where the flame wasn't lit, was the Untended Graves in Dark Souls 3, where you fight Champion Gundyr. You see a world where the flame wasn't lit, you know? But what you see in there, in the Untended Graves, is not what the Age of Dark has been described to be. Does that make sense? The Untended Graves is just literally dark, as in the sun's out, as in it looks like it's nighttime. But the enemies there aren't like these abyssal creations. If it was genuinely the Age of Dark there, then all those creatures should be fragments of man. They should all be humanity sprites. It seems, honestly, like the Age of Dark can no longer happen. That the linking of the first flame was a permanent fuck-up. Like, genuinely permanent. And the closest thing the world has ever gotten, in the Souls world, is the first flame dying out for a time before being relit. Like, the Age of Dark can't come. It can only be like a pause in the Age of Fire. Which is incredibly existentially depressing. That Gwyn, this one guy, fucked up the universe by doing this. At least until the flames permanently burn out. Yeah, but it's never happened. By the time Dark Souls 3 rolls around, there have been so many cycles, and it just hasn't happened. It seems that Gwyn branding humans with the Ring of Fire permanently linked humanity into the fire, thus extending indefinitely. Yeah, that's the real issue, right? Because humanity was meant to be the thing that transcended the Age of Fire. Humanity was born of the dark, and thus when the Age of Dark came, humanity would be its herald. But by tying the first flame to the envoys of the Age of Dark, he essentially made the first flame itself as undying as the humans were made to be. So will killing all humans bring the Age of Dark? Well, you can't kill them, that's the problem. Because they're undying. The closest thing that ever happened to that was what Slave Knight Gale did. Slave Knight Gale didn't just kill them, he physically consumed them to absorb the Dark Soul within. Funnily, like, the more you think about it, the more apparent it is. Slave Knight Gale is literally the protagonist of the Dark Souls trilogy. Like massively so. It's because of Gwyn's bullshit, Normal Spaceman. The Curse of Undeath was explicitly because Gwyn linked humanity to the First Flame with his power. Yeah, exactly, Sergeant Sonar, because it's so weak by then. But yeah, a Slave Knight Gale really is like the protagonist of the Dark Souls, which is just really funny to think about, you know? Like, oh, we can't enter the Age of Dark and, you know, end this tortuous Age of Fire because humanity is linked to the Dark Soul. The Dark Soul is twisted into the fate of the First Flame. So I will eat all of humanity. Quelaag is a tragic character. Oh, Quelaag is super tragic. Basically, they're daughters of the Witch of Izalith, the person who created all of demonkind in her arrogant and heretical effort to mimic the First Flame. So her secret is that a lot of her melee attacks can be avoided. That wasn't a melee attack, that didn't count. Both Quelaag and Quelana, her sister, were corrupted by the burst of demonic influence, hence the giant spider bit. Quelana was sickly to begin with, but when she saw the damage and devastation done to her kin, she attempted to absorb the corruption of her weaker compatriots by eating the pus that grew on their bodies, making herself sicker and, well, honestly not really saving them. I mean, it didn't fix the problem. But it's the thought that counts. And Quelaag here is protecting her sister. She's also attacking you. She wants to farm humanity to Quelana. Yeah, that's true. She wants to give humanity to Quelana to help prolong her health. Oh, I always wondered about that, by the way. Quelaag and Quelana aren't human. Why would humanity heal Quelana? They're gods, aren't they? They're the same species as Gwyn. Humanity is anathema to them. Just consuming their power. Yeah, it could just be like raw power. Just like sort of feasting on souls. Is the pus in Dark Souls 1 the same as the pus of man like in Dark Souls 3? No, the pus of man in Dark Souls 3 is just the corruption of the abyss. I think that in this case, they're actually saying that she literally ate pus. What's worse, eating dung or eating pus? They're both bad, though they're doing it for different reasons. The dung eater ate dung because it was part of a curse ritual to have things be reborn as omen, whereas Quelana ate pus because she's a humanitarian. Why does humanity look like Ussie? If you look closely, it's a person. The little pinched bit at the top is their head. These are humanity sprites. When we reach the chasm of the abyss at the end of the game, they're all over the place. It's an outline of a human form. It's essentially the essence of a human. There is the largest boss in the game by far over here. This is also a tragic tale. The boss here is not a violent one. Not by nature, at least. This was one of the siblings of the children of the Witch of Izalith. One of the more hideously mutated of the group as a product of the demonic flame that the Witch of Izalith produced. They tried to heal Ceaseless Discharge, but didn't quite work. Anyway, it's called Ceaseless Discharge because all the lava in the area is a product of it constantly weeping lava. That is what it discharges. It, however, does not attack you unless you take the clothing of the dead sister that he's watching over, hypothetically. Now, there's a special way to kill this guy. He also has special ways of killing you. And frankly, by the way, killing the Ceaseless Discharge, kind of a moral good. The man was suffering. Like, really, really suffering. The orange ring was created by his sister to help alleviate his pain, his non-stop agony, and he lost it. It created the Centipede Demon, which is a later boss fight. This is a mercy kill thing. You can't give him the ring back? No. First of all, even if that was something you could do mechanically, the ring is beyond where you can access for abating his fire, his lava, so there's that. Second of all, I have a feeling that we don't really have the training necessary to administer something like that. Isn't the ring more of a promise or vow than an object? No, the orange ring is literally a ring that you get and equip in-game. It mitigates lava damage. Nice try! Do you know if the demons are also people? They all used to be people after all, right? No, I don't think so. Chat, I could be wrong, but in Dark Souls, the demons are new life. They're not corrupted humans. They're their own life. Yeah, the Witch of Izalith was successful. She was able to create a new wellspring of life. It just wasn't the one she wanted. Is Izalith the OG demon mama? The Witch of Izalith certainly is. In Dark Souls 3, they have a king. You travel through their own cities. They're totally sentient. Yeah. The Chaos Flame can only warp existing life, not create new life. Is that true? I'm pretty sure the demons are new life. Wouldn't that kind of necessitate the demons being infertile? I never got the impression that the demons in this game reproduce the way that we do. I think the main tip-off for me is just the fact that demons are not affected by the curse of undeath. Twisted imitation first from the flaming chaos could not create anything but only warp existing beings, thus perverting all life in its wake. Starting from the witch vice and let her children, the family chaos transforms victims into monsters. Oh, okay, Bilberry Juice. Never mind then. According to the Dark Souls 1 lore itself, it was just a twisting of existing creatures. Didn't know that. Well, there doesn't seem to be any remnant of the Dark Soul in that which the you know, has become the demons. Oh, well. Oh, we're alive. Never mind. Wow. Is there any lore why there are snake-headed people? Are they a different race or something? The snake-headed people are products of Seath the Scaleless, right? Seath, the traitor dragon, who just wanted to do his research. Yeah, I think they're products of his design. You see more of them in the Duke's archives, alongside some more twisted creations that didn't work out quite as well, I think. We're too late. We're too late! Motherfuck! It hit me twice. Wait. Can we not? See if we can one-shot the Iron Golem. Get it. What? The fuck? What? Fuck. Shh. Jesus. Ever wonder why undead don't just, like, leave this place and go live their immortal lives somewhere that isn't filled with horrible monstrosities? Dark Souls 2 actually answers that. That's one of the things that people really, like, don't realize about Dark Souls 2. It's much more of a personal narrative than it is a narrative about the world. The opening cutscene in Dark Souls 2 is like, the undead curse, like, you go hollow eventually. The stronger people last longer, but everyone goes hollow. And you lose everything. All your memories at first, your mind, your heart, just everything. In Dark Souls 3, when you're traveling through the prison, you will occasionally grab an item from the arms of a withered hollow, something that looks like it should, like a millennia-old corpse. But they'll scream when you take it from them. Nothing dies. All of these withered corpses you find in Dark Souls are alive in some sense of the word, which is absolutely terrifying to think about. Why not go live until you go hollow somewhere that's nice and peaceful? Because the main way to forestall becoming hollow is to consume humanity, and you want to go where things are happening for that to be possible. Like, I think for the most part, like, hollows are drawn, well, in terms of, like, the narrative, right? I'm pretty sure the undead in Dark Souls are not privy to the information that we are. They think that kindling the first flame is something they can survive doing, and they believe the reason they're going hollow is because the first flame is dying out. So the reason a lot of the humans and hollows and undead are drawn here is because they think that they can link the flame and therefore negate their hollowing state. They were lied to by the gods. Guys, isn't that correct? That's part of the, like, the prophecy of the chosen undead was like a story created. Like, oh, hey, why are you going hollow? Well, of course you're going hollow. The first flame is dying out. You're going hollow because the flame is dying. They're drawn here because they think they can prevent that. Gwyn is still alive? Gwyn is hollow. Gwyn's body was strong enough to survive linking the first flame, but his mind wasn't. He's hollow. He's long gone. Gwyn is one of the gods too? Well, Gwyn is the god. Oh, I'm dumb. Do things ever get better in Dark Souls? Is there, like, a good end? The closest thing you get to a good end is at the end of Dark Souls 3, the Ring City DLC, you use the entire reformed Dark Soul, the entirety of the Dark Soul, brought together by Slave Knight Gale, to allow a painter to paint a world. In this game, in Dark Souls 1, you can enter the painted world of Ariamis. Essentially, there are... it's a kind of magic. You make a world in which people can live, and people do live there. The issue is that the painted worlds all eventually rot, because they're sustained only with magic. They're not durable. The idea is that by using the Dark Soul itself as pigment, they could create an eternal painted world to escape the interminable Age of Fire.